Ana reira ua wai rea te one tapu ka hura tangata uta te tūraki atu ki tangata atai. Ka hura tangata atai te tūraki atu ki tangata uta. Pērā hoki rā te kōrepe nui, te kōrepe roa. Te wāhia wa te toe toe wa whakamaua, atamaki te ara whakamoe, atamaki te ara. No tū norongo whano, whano haramai te toki. Haumi e, hui e, tai
Ai
ki.
ki e.
E te wāhingaro, i o te ioio nui, o te ioio roa, i o take take, i o te matua, he aro tupua, he rata whitō, o te a koe, e i o e. Kia koutou, ngā tini mate, e takoto tiraha mai ana ki ngā marae huhua o te motu. Haere, haere, haere o tiatu. O ki mai anō rā ngā rārangi kōrero kia tātou, kua pae nei ki te poho o te rangahau, ki te arero o te pūkoro pūtea, nau mai, haere mai, whakatau mai. Welcome and thank you all for joining us for today's webinar, The Insider's Guide to How to Improve Your Chance of Research Funding Success. This webinar is hosted by A Better Start, e tipu e rea, the New Zealand Government's National Science Challenge, and Cure Kids, the country's largest funder of child health research, who have joined forces to establish a contestable funding round to improve the well-being of our tamariki. I'll be your host today, Kawiti Waitford, and hailing all the way from Te Taitokera. This is the first of our information sharing webinars for the joint contestable round. Our presenters today are Professor Wayne Cutfield, Professor Te Kani Kingi, and Tara Satyanand. They will take us through the request for proposal released last month. You'll hear what funders are expecting from applicants and how you can improve your chance of success. Bit of housekeeping, today's webinar is scheduled for up to 45 minutes, including Q&A. The webinar will be recorded and loaded onto our website so you can listen again later or share with others. The audience members will be automatically muted throughout the session, and our Q&A session at the end of the webinar. Feel free to submit questions using the Q&A function located at the bottom of the Zoom window, and feel free to upvote questions submitted by others, and our team will field those questions to the speakers. So without further ado, I'd like now to hand over to Professor Wayne. Te rangatira, tēnā koe.
Kia ora. Thank you very much, Kawiti. That's a very flattering introduction. Now, this is a wonderful, and perhaps Catherine can start the slide sets. This is a wonderful opportunity, and it's the second such round that has been hosted by A Better Start and Cure Kids. And as Kawiti mentioned, we have a great partnership between the only National Science Challenge of the 11 that focuses on the health and well-being of children. And in fact, if you look at National Science Challenges and Centres of Research Excellence, of which collectively there are 25, almost 30, only one of them has a focus on children. And then, of course, we're partnering with Cure Kids, which is New Zealand's largest independent funder of research for child health and has really led the way with child health research funding. Next slide, Catherine. Now, we know that every child needs the best possible start in life, and that's why together we are committing $4 million for this joint research funding round to improve the wellbeing of our tamariki. There are three main research areas, and they are, broadly speaking, healthy weight, successful learning, and mental resilience and wellbeing. Now, if you want, stay there, Catherine. If you want to find out more, and you will, please go to either of the two websites, A Better Start or the Cure Kids website, and you'll find the application process. Next slide. So what makes this perhaps a little different to a lot of funding rounds is that this is mission-led, and the expectation is the research will lead to positive change for the health and well-being of our children. What the projects will not be are science-led, where an interesting question is asked and there is discovery of something, but it doesn't change the health and well-being of our children. So we're looking for practical evidence-based solutions which target the three areas that I've mentioned: healthy weight, successful learning, mental resilience and well-being. Next slide. Now, we will prioritise outcomes for Māori and Pacific communities because we're about equity and improving health and well-being for all of our children. And so for that reason, if we want to give every child the same chance in life, then we need to provide greater support and access to those who are furthest from being in an ideal position. And so clearly focusing on Māori and Pacifica communities will be important. The age ranges from conception through to adolescence. Having said that, there definitely is a focus on early intervention to create positive change rather than trying to fix something that is very much well established. We're looking for cross-discipline, cross-sector approaches, and we would also like to see kaupapa Māori methodologies included in proposals. We encourage those to be included. And certainly if kaupapa Māori methodologies aren't used, it is absolutely important, and Te Kani will talk about that in a moment, that there is very careful consideration of Māori in the design, creation and delivery of proposals. Next slide, Catherine. So there are essentially two kinds of grants, and for the vast majority of you, it is the first bullet point that you'll be focusing on, and that is that there are grants up to $500,000 each, $500,000 for up to 2 years. Now, having said that, if there is a short extension negotiated, that may be possible, but any extension cannot go beyond the 30th of June 2024, when the current period of funding for a Better Start would cease. In addition, and this really only applies to a handful of potential applicants, is that there are extension grants available to those who were successful in our first joint funding round several years ago to take that research and extend it further. Now, that's not just simply continuing pushing on doing the same project. It's the next stage, the next step. And that's for an additional $250,000 over 1 year. And that's it from me.
E hoi no, tēnā koutou. Ko te me tūtahi mihi ana tēnei ki a koe kāuti mō kupu hei whakatūwhera ai tā tātou hui. Nō reira tēnā koe I tira mutu, pai ki te rongo mai o reo. Ki a koe hoki Wayne, tēnā koe mō kōrero hei whakamārama mai ki a ngai tātou, te āhuatanga o tēnei rangahau. Ki a koutou hoki, tēnā koutou katoa. Well, thank you for providing me with the opportunity to speak briefly about Mātauranga Māori and Vision Mātauranga. And as you can see there from the definition, essentially it aims to unlock innovation and potential of Māori knowledge, resources and people to assist New Zealanders to create a better future. A fairly ambitious goal, easy to say, but to apply within a research or investment context, especially given that research and investigations can differ considerably in terms of their focus and their intent. However, I'd just like to offer some broad guidelines in terms of how Vision Mātauranga and Mātauranga Māori might be interpreted. Next slide, please. I guess one of the most important consideration really focuses and concerns relationships, nurturing relationships both with Māori researchers, but also Māori communities if they're part of any investigation. It's probably important that those relationships are developed and nurtured early and not as an afterthought in terms of potential contribution to a research or program of research. They need to be sincere, ingenuous, and authentic. Those are probably the main points there about building relationships so that people don't feel as if they're an afterthought or merely included just for the purposes of the grant only. Another important consideration is around building knowledge, as Vision Mātauranga states, and really attempting at the same time to build capacity, I guess, as funders or reviewers, if there is an opportunity to build Māori capacity in particular spaces where there isn't currently a lot of Māori endeavour or interest or activity, that will also be looked upon favourably as an additional outcome of the research. As academics and researchers, sometimes, but not always, one of the objectives or the measures of success would centre on scholarship or publications. In terms of Mātauranga Māori and Vision Mātauranga, there would be an expectation that there's a broader contribution in some meaningful way, and especially for this, what we're talking about here today, some tangible contribution to Māori development and to demonstrate that and how that will be achieved. Next slide, please. And quite apart from demonstrating a contribution to Māori development and Māori communities, also if there's a possibility of making creating some sort of insights into Māori knowledge, into Māori custom, the economy, especially health, the environment, but what we'll be focusing on here, and particularly with these grants, is in the health area. So making the ability to make a contribution to our understanding of a particular issue or challenge, but if possible, and as Wayne mentioned, identifying what the potential solutions might be. It's important, I guess, when engaging with Māori researchers and Māori communities to help support any grant application. It's important to listen and to listen sincerely in terms of what the goals and aspirations or expectations of the communities might be, or the Māori researchers that might be involved. And this, I guess, is just as important for Māori-led projects and those that may not be Māori-led, but may have a Māori dimensional component to it. And again, just the point there about sincere involvement in any program of research. And it can be fairly easy for reviewers of applications to detect when involvement of Māori or the inclusion of Māori methodologies where appropriate is an afterthought. So just carefully about involvement and how that might be promoted within any application, any investigation or research that is sincere. There's a term that's sometimes used that some, particularly Māori that might be asked to be involved in the project, they don't just want to be muffin blessers. And what I mean by that is just do the Māori thing, or come along to hui, or organise hui. There's a real thirst for active and genuine involvement in research as a learning opportunity, as an opportunity to contribute to Māori health, to the health and well-being of Māori children. And I think it's an opportunity that all researchers should look to promote. Kia ora koutou.
Kia ora, thank you, Te Kani. I hope you can hear me. My name's Tara Satyanand and I'm here representing Cure Kids. Cure Kids is really pleased and proud to be working with A Better Start again. You may know that we ran a joint round together in 2017, and we funded 11 projects, and we've done an evaluation of those projects, and we were really pleased with the impact for children. So that's why we're back here again, looking to fund more research in this area and see if we can again try to really make a difference. So alongside Mātauranga Māori, as Te Kani has discussed, we have 4 other assessment criteria which we'll be considering when we review these proposals. The first is impact, and I think Wayne and Te Kani have both referred to this, the idea that, that we're looking for real evidence-based solutions targeted to those 3 areas. The second is Mātauranga Māori. Does the proposal value Māori methodologies, knowledge and practices, and have the ability to realise vision Mātauranga? The third one is scientific excellence. So just making sure that your hypothesis or the area of inquiry is original, making sure that you're considering research end users engaged right throughout the process, and that your design and objectives have been carefully thought through. Equity is a huge thing. So is your proposal in response to an existing area where there is not an equity in our health system? This may be Māori or Pacifica, or you may identify another group that is vulnerable or that is particularly struggling in one of these areas. And finally, experience. So does your research team have the right skills? And this is not just, who has the longest list of publications. This is about diversity on the team. This is about making sure you have the resources in terms of collaboration and data and skills and the network, not just in the academic community, but out into, say, the clinical sector and the broader society. So what everybody will need to do is to log on to the Cure Kids grants portal. Cure Kids is taking responsibility for administering the round, and we have an established process and systems for doing this. If you don't already have an account with us, there's a fairly straightforward process for creating a new account. You'll need to enter the details for the principal investigator, and you'll also need to have your institution registered. Now, if you don't see your host institution in the drop-down list of institutions we've worked with before, we have a list of criteria for a host institution, and you'll just need to make sure that you can supply all the documentation, and so that by the time we come back to you to ask you for a full proposal, that we're able to work with your host institution to make sure that they can meet those requirements. We talked before about the assessment criteria, and all of those will translate across to a section on the form for you to write your expression of interest. So we're looking for you to be as concise and succinct as possible, just so that we'll have a large volume of applications we're expecting in the first round of this 2-phase process. So we're hoping that the initial expressions of interest will fit on 2 pages. So title, what's the priority area, how do you express your consideration of Mātauranga Māori, your research design in 250 words, a statement about equity, and then describe your teams and the collaborations of your team. So in the portal, that will look like this. So for each section, there'll be a free text box. It's fairly straightforward, and you'll see that there are guidelines and frequently asked questions that should help you to fill this out. You can also email us if you get stuck at any stage during this process. As with anything, I'd encourage you to log on early in the process to start. Don't leave it all up to the last day before it's due, so that if there is going to be any issue with the technology you're using or any of those technical questions, we've got time to work with you to answer those. So in terms of the time frame, you've already seen the request for proposals that's gone out. The expressions of interest, that's that 2-page document, that's Wednesday the 17th of February. We will establish 3 assessing panels, probably, 1 for each of those theme areas. They will meet in March, and we will carefully go through all of those expressions of interest and rank them and select the very best. And then we will notify all applicants on Wednesday the 31st of March of the outcome of that decision. We will invite those very best expressions of interest to come back and write a full proposal. So there are 6 weeks there for those people to write a full proposal and submit that on Wednesday the 12th of May. We will then go out to expert referees, both in New Zealand and internationally, and we'll try to match the proposals to experts in that area. And then for each of those proposals, we'll aim to have around 2 or 3 expert referees. And the assessing panels will meet again, and they will review the proposals themselves and the reviews prepared by the expert referees, and again go through the process of ranking and selecting the very best. We've got a joint strategy group which includes representatives from Cure Kids and A Better Start, and that group will make recommendations to the boards of both Cure Kids and A Better Start, and we will notify all applicants in the week of the 12th of July 2021. So those are the big deadlines you need to look out for, and yeah, we will aim to have all the contracts ready to go in September next year. So, are there any questions from the people on the line? I can see just opening the Q&A box. There's a first question saying, does one proposal have to cover all 3 themes? Thank you, Kahu, for your question. No, you can focus your question in one particular area. Although, you know, if you have a question that integrates more than one area, we'd be very, very pleased to consider that as well.
Can I just add to that, Tara? And that's exactly right. Having said that, if there was a proposal, for example, that was looking at childhood wellbeing and seemed to capture the 3 areas, then the obvious question is, well, how will we manage that? Because we've got these 3 themes, and there'll be 3 assessment panels. And we'll manage it by looking at which of the 3 themes was sort of dominant if it turned out to involve more than one theme. And in addition, we'll have referees. Each proposal will be reviewed by a number of referees, and we'll make sure they provide wider capture of the themes.
Thanks, Wayne. The second question is whether it's possible for several people to access the same application. It really needs to be just the principal investigator for each application. I guess you could discuss with yourselves whether you were going to share those login details, but we don't have it enabled on our system to enable multiple logins for the same application.
The question about co-leads, and I'm not sure what your view will be here, Tara. The practical difficulty in having multiple leads, particularly if they come from different institutions, is that one person in one institution needs to be responsible and the point of communication for the grant. So if there is a co-lead, there still needs to be a nominated person who is the point of contact in that and that individual's institution. So I understand that there can be shared levels of responsibility, but at the end of the day, there's one person, one institution who needs to be responsible. Would that be your assessment too, Tara?
Yes, that's right. There needs to be a single main applicant who's the sort of principal investigator, but you can also nominate a co-lead. There's a question about, oh, I've lost it. There was a question I'm sure I saw about whether you could submit more than one. So a group could submit multiple applications, and yes, that's absolutely possible. They have to be completely distinct, obviously, they can't be overlapping, but you can absolutely submit more than one, and you can submit for a new grant, even if you've been invited to submit for an extension of a previous project that you had funded in the 2017 joint round.
Te Kani, you've responded to Chris in chat, but do you want to just briefly address his question about the comment that you made about Ingenious?
Yeah, really, and I thought it was a good question, and probably deserves additional explanation in terms of, I guess, one of the challenges that some Māori researchers face is that when an application is prepared for funding, Vision Mātauranga or Mātauranga Māori is often an afterthought, but it's a box that needs to be ticked in terms of getting any application across the line. So it would, I guess, be unwise to develop an application without any sort of forethought in terms of how you might engage with Māori or Māori researchers so that they have the opportunity to contribute to the development and design of any relevant application, as opposed to an afterthought. And from a reviewer's perspective, it's not too difficult to I guess, determine or to review those applications where there's been a sincere effort to engage Māori and to incorporate Māori methodological perspectives and outcomes into the study, as opposed to those that don't. And just to qualify that as well, that the manner in which that's achieved or undertaken will vary considerably depending on what the group is trying to achieve. So there is no one size fits all approach or methodology. But I think a good start point is just being sincere in terms of engagement with either Māori researchers or Māori communities, and earlier the better.
Tara, you wanted to address the heartfelt anonymous attendee who I can feel their anguish here.
It's a question about if you have less than 2 years remaining on your existing contract, are you eligible to put in an expression of interest? So there are budget guidelines that you can access, and there's information there about overheads and salaries, so on. Just so that you know that the funders, we will only cover salaries for researchers who depend on securing some of their salaries, so sort of soft funding from outside. Now, if you have less than the 2 full years remaining on your contract, you need to submit a letter from your institution to state that if you are successful, that they will extend your contract for the duration, and hopefully they will agree to do that.
Kahu's asked a follow-up question: how are you going to support first-time applicants who'll be competing with experienced and previously successful applicants? And we've talked about this quite a lot. The applicants, in terms of their track record skills, are not just going to be weighed by their CVs, as I think Tara had said. It's based on their potential, their capacity, we are encouraging of less senior investigators. Having said that, one of the things that would help strengthen the less senior investigators, the early career researchers application, is by including some more senior people within their application process, but they could potentially lead the application, for example. Now, I know in some funding bodies, the initial weighing is based on who the PI is, but we would look at the entire team, and I don't believe that would disadvantage an early career researcher if they were the PI. Correct, Tara?
Yes, absolutely. We do want to encourage collaboration, and you know, for people to draw on a diverse range of skills and experiences in the group, but we certainly wouldn't deprioritise somebody who was early in their career.
Just on one of the slides that you showed, Tara, on the assessment process and excellence, and it's something that I just want to reinforce because it'll easily be forgotten. Te Kani talked very eloquently about Māori partnership and how critical that is. But to deliver impactful research, relationships with end users and stakeholders is absolutely vital. And as Te Kani mentioned, and I love that term, mutton blessers, I must remember that one. Similarly, stakeholders will not want to be tacked on as afterthoughts. Relationships are required with stakeholders if you're going to be working with them to deliver community-based change. So I would strongly encourage applicants, while they're thinking about their science, you need to be thinking about your relationships and partnerships almost before you get very far in thinking about your science. Don't go with a proposal in pocket to Māori collaborators or stakeholders saying, sign this please, it won't fly.
Yeah, we would hope that relationships would endure before, during and after the research to have the maximum impact for children. Are there any other questions? So we've recorded this session and we'll be putting it up, and we will have an additional session in February when you've all started and maybe nearly finished writing up your expressions of interest. And in the meantime, you'd be more than welcome to email your questions in. Not too many over the Christmas period, please, but we will do our very best to answer them.
I just saw a couple of comments there. I'm just wondering if those are questions, and if not.
It's just a nice comment, so thank you.
Nice. Oh,
card coming to you, Nicholas. Christmas card on the way.
Just before we wrap up, Te whānau, I'm wondering if any of our panelists have anything further to add just before we wrap up.
Let me make one comment, and then I can see Tara, you're poised to say something. This is a wonderful opportunity. It is, you know, it's entirely focused on the well-being of children. Give it a go. Give it a go. An EOI is not an overwhelmingly onerous process. You will need relationships. That's really important, but the total writing preparation isn't vast to get started.
And just to add to that, absolutely. I mean, from Cure Kids' perspective, we are partnering with A Better Start because this is a national science challenge. These three areas of healthy weight, successful learning, and mental resilience have been selected through a really thorough process as being the most urgent priorities facing our future generation. And we need to put our heads together with the best expertise we have to solve these problems for our children. So, you know, we've just had a horrific year with COVID, and in many ways, young people have borne the brunt of that. So we are really looking forward to seeing what your collective wisdom and knowledge and expertise can come up with. I think the beauty of these national science challenges is that they encourage people to step out of their silos, to collaborate across the country, internationally, out into the community. So please be innovative, be bold. We're really looking forward to seeing some exciting work coming through, and we are going to be right behind you supporting it.
Kia ora, Tara. Te kani he koro whakamutunga wai?
Kaia koe te wai pai o kupu hei whakatau mai i tātou, so māhau he mea hei whakakapi tātou hui pēr.
Kia ora, tēnā tātou hono. Just acknowledging the wonderful kōrero that we've had and this wonderful opportunity for bettering our futures collectively I roto o Aotearoa I te ao whānui. So thank you very much. E te puerea, kia kids. And hei whakakapi mā tātou, I'll just close us off with a karakia. Nā reira, unuhia te uru tapunui, kia wātea, kia māma, a te ngākau te tinana te wairua, te hine ngaro I te arataka tū, ko I ara I rongo whakairia a ke kirunga, tūturu o whiti whakamaua kia tīna, haumi e, hui e, tai ki e. Kia ora tātou. Merry Christmas.
Kia ora. Thank you, Kawati. Ka kite.